executive editor at Entertainment Weekly and your host for this week's Half Hour With. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest today, Mr. Seth Meyers. Hi, Seth.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I am so well, and part of the reason that we're talking today is because Seth has been nominated for not one, but 2 Emmy Awards this year.
This is the first I'm hearing of either of these. This is amazing.
Well, congratulations. I'm so excited to bring you this news.
Thank you.
You've been nominated for Outstanding Writing for a Variety Series for your own show, Late Night with Seth Meyers, and Outstanding Writing for a Variety Special for Lobby Baby, which, you know, every time I say Lobby Baby, I say Lobby Baby, Lobby Booby, and I'm sure that's not the first time that you've heard that. For all our Sondheim fans out there. But before we get started in our conversation, we're going to take a look at a short clip from the show.
Good evening, I'm Seth Meyers. This is Late Night. How's everybody doing tonight?
To impeach a president who 63 million people voted for over 8 lines in a call transcript is baloney.
Oh, it's a baloney. Really loses the drama when the word you're ramping up to is baloney. You know, you never hear a detective in a mystery novel saying, "I've deduced that the suspect's alibi is baloney." The new movie Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker features a lesbian kiss.
And for most women, so does college.
The governor of Wisconsin signed a bill that allows kids to sell Kool-Aid without a permit.
But are cops still gonna hassle black kids selling Kool-Aid?
Oh, yeah!
And now, Amber, have the cops ever hassled you?
Oh, yeah!
President Trump visited Walter Reed Medical Center on Saturday and wore a face mask publicly for the first time. Wow! Only 4 months too late. What's he gonna do next? Drag his Christmas tree out to the curb? Start making sourdough starter and watching Tiger King govern?
It's time for day drinking with Seth and Rihanna.
Wait, you have to look at me in the eyes.
Where did you wear that?
The Met Ball.
Wow, I'm gonna do 2.
2! Oh my God, Dad.
I want to like blow my wife away with like a romantic night out. What do I do?
You said it.
What?
Blow your wife.
This is a network television show.
For anyone who might not be watching the show, I think this is good evidence for why you should be watching the show. So
That was a delight. It was nice to see the studio and remember a time where you did not have to worry about COVID when you drank with Rihanna.
It's very exciting, and we were just talking about missing offices, something that we didn't think we were going to do, missing offices, but you have now settled into a routine that you have, and you have your pal, the sea captain, with you. And I actually want to start with the sea captain because I'm a little concerned about yourself.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, the sea captain, is he real to you?
The sea captain isn't real to me, but it is very real that, you know, due to the constraints of having to do these shows from different locations while we've slowly worked our way back to the studio, which we're going to be doing in a couple of weeks, it has been very real to find fun pieces of nonsense to fill the day, because I have been doing these fully alone. And so, you know, even the very fact that I text an old friend sea captain lines every day and then he texts them back is a nice piece of human interaction that has become very necessary for these times.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about trying to do this show that is normally a show that you do as a group, having to do it in like Zoom calls and over text. Are there things that have actually been positive that have come out of that, sort of mother of invention type bits that you might bring back to the show when you go back to the studio?
You know, I don't know what we will bring back, but I do want to just tip my cap to our writing staff. Has been so efficient, and if they were requiring interaction with one another, it did not show once that interaction was taken away. Like, the jokes, I feel, have been as good as ever. You know, the monologue has been so fun to do. And, you know, the thing that has been maybe one of the things I'll be proudest of this time is, the fact that when there was all this unrest, I should say, excuse me, after the George Floyd murder, the fact that, Amber, I don't know if we would have done it in studio. Maybe we would have. I can't say, but the fact that she opened a week's worth of shows with her own, personal stories about interactions with police, that sort of, I think, was a piece of invention that we're very happy, we came up with, or she came up with, I should say.
No, it's worked out so well. And I also just love, one of my favorite recurring things on the show is Jokes Seth Can't Tell, that has Amber and Jenny in it. And I feel like you guys know how well it works, how often you deploy it, like it turns out so well. But I also feel like it's the actual sort of evidence that having a diverse writers room is a good thing. Like, this is literal proof that this is a thing worth having these different voices on the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a fun bit because it proves so many elements of that. I mean, the first thing it proves is that there are jokes that are good jokes that have no value if I'm the one saying them, right? That's not an indictment of me. It's just the fact that part of the success of jokes is based on the delivery system. So, first you have a diverse writers room, they're writing jokes that they like that I can't say, and then they are also smart enough to come to you with the idea of, hey, I think it'd be funny if we said these with you. And we've had so much success doing it over and over again. I will say, like, it is we've done it a few times during these social distanced times. It is when I miss the audience the most, not because of the jokes going well, but because no one can save bad jokes better than Amber and Jenny. And I'm just in awe of the amount they want to do jokes that I assure them will get nothing but groans and gasps. And their just eyes light up with glee of like, we'll push them over the cliff and then grab them by the hand right before they fall.
Well, and also just like the sort of actual physical energy of the three of you sitting there, of like Amber shaking and Jenny just being fully still and you having a little bit of panic radiating off of you. There's actual chemical energy to what's happening in that.
No, it's true. You don't, a lot of the time you're out in front of the audience. Certainly, in the first couple acts of the show, you tend to be alone. And so I've always said, and I felt the same way when I was doing Weekend Update. The minute someone else comes out, be it one of your fellow writers or performer, or even when the guests start coming out, it really stops feeling like work at that point, and you just feel like you get to be an up-close audience member, and it flies by once that starts.
Right. And I wanted to ask a little bit about the Emmy nominations themselves. So this is the 4th year in a row that you have been nominated and the show has been nominated for this. So I'm assuming that is both gratifying and also like, hey, when are we going to win?
Oh, no. I mean, I think our show is very proud of the writing we do. And we're also very aware of the high level of writing that goes on in the other shows in our category. So to be honest, that wide shot moment where you look at your show in the category and the other shows you get to share the nomination with, that's a very nice feeling. And, again, winning would be wonderful. But I think for most of us, if we feel any stress about what the outcome will be, it's probably on nomination day more than the actual day of the Emmys.
Right, exactly. Sort of the nervousness before it happens. But I wonder if during this time, and having talked to some of your counterparts for EW, if you're feeling more of a kinship with your late night brethren because you're all in a kind of in the same space in a way that maybe you weren't before, regardless of what time you're on.
Yes, I mean, certainly, I think in the early days of it is when I talked to people the most, just about like the early logistics. And there was a fair amount of, how are you thinking about doing it? Where are you thinking about doing it? I mentioned in an interview some technical limitations I was having, and Jimmy Kimmel, I got an email from him, a few hours later saying you need to do this, this, and this. And that was super helpful. And so there is, I think throughout my tenure doing the show, you have a kinship because it's very unique to host shows like these. But yes, I do think that's an accurate observation on your part that we do, it's weird for something to happen that we all have to react to it the same way.
Yeah, and it's interesting the difference in the reactions, which is actually from a viewer standpoint, really entertaining, that you're all sort of approaching this slightly differently, that you didn't do the equivalent of everybody had a desk and a monologue and what have you of the shows themselves. So I think it's been so fun as a viewer actually to watch during this time.
Well, it is so true because, a few years back, we always laugh about how much attention was paid to the fact that we went from a standing monologue to a sitting behind a desk monologue. And a fair amount of ink was spilled, which I think even at the time, the people who were spilling the ink were acknowledging this speaks to how little room there is to do anything different once you're in the studio. Because, again, years and years of talk shows and studios have sort of unified based on what worked, right? It wasn't out of laziness or a lack of invention. It was people collectively saying, I think people at home like this. This is the way it looks best. And so it has been fun to watch us all sort of splinter off as we, get out of studios. And I've enjoyed watching everyone. And as much as I am happy that we're headed back, it's been a journey I will remember.
Yes, exactly. None of us shall forget this time. But
No.
I want to ask about the Lobby Baby nomination, which is so exciting, right? I mean, not that the nomination for the show isn't, but is it a different sort of feeling to get nominated for the solo act, for the band?
Yes, I should also note it caught me more off guard, so it was a pure delight. And again, the people in that category are both, friends and people I look up to. So it's a great mix. And it's cool that it is this thing that is very much uniquely your own. And it's fun that, as opposed to the show, which you sort of write every morning for that night, like this was something that I worked on for years. And it's nice that it turned out that well.
And just as a writer, as opposed to a performer, is there part of you that's like, wow, that's a nice little confidence boost. I must be doing something right with the actual words to get 2 nominations.
Yes, although I should note in both categories, the work was nominated for writing and not performing, which I do believe is it's hard not to take as an indictment for my face.
But is that something that actually, I don't think it's an indictment of your performance. It is, it's a boost to your writing is what it is.
Yes, and I should clarify, I was being tongue in cheek and I do identify still most as a writer, and to be recognized for that is it was more important to me than anything. So it was really, like I said, that morning, getting nominated for writing for 2 things was a really nice morning.
So do you get up really early for it, or do you feel like that jinxes up?
Well, I feel like it used to be like super crack of dawny, and now it's sort of I think it got more reasonable, right? Like I think especially being on the East Coast, it actually like falls weirdly like right around lunchtime, and so your fear is like something will happen that will ruin lunch, and who among us wants their lunch ruined?
Exactly. So thankfully you had a good lunch that day.
Yeah.
But to go back to Amber for a minute, who I think I am a really big fan of.
Yes.
Personally. I enjoy her so much. And I'm so excited that she is getting her own show on Peacock in the fall, and that you are shifting in a role to producer on that show.
Yes.
And then she is also still going to be on late night. So this sounds like a very complicated series of scheduling, or is it not? You just like write a pile of stuff and one pile is for Amber's show and one pile is for late night.
I mean, I should say that the reason this works is because Amber is this incredibly prolific self-starter when it comes to writing. And so we feel very confident that we're going to get enough from her that it will both be worth keeping her as an integral element of our writing staff, and also having space for her to do things that we don't have the real estate for.
Love the idea of her voice in late night, of people of color in late night. And, we have Lily now, we have Amber to look forward to. And it's funny because, this is a conversation that we have been having for years now, that this landscape has always been dominated by straight white guys. And to be part of sort of pivoting to new voices, was that something that was important to you? Outside of it being specifically Amber.
Yeah, it really was. And I will say that, having been at SNL, you always realize that if you have writers who write different as opposed to the same as writers you have, you're going to be better off. The show is just going to become more infinite in its possibilities. And, the great thing about Amber getting her own show as well is, we can have a diverse writing staff, but then Amber gets to staff up a show, right? And like ultimately that's, I think, the way you hope that the dominoes start to fall, because
Right.
you only have so many slots on a writing staff to to give people opportunities with. And so the absolute perfect outcome is when it, then becomes exponential, because hopefully other people on your staff will get the opportunity to put their staffs together. And, I think the speed in which Amber knew exactly who she wanted to be on that writing staff was also a cool thing to watch.
Absolutely. Now, because I'm from Boston, I have to ask about your family. How are they?
Yes, please. They're really good. We let him make his case on the show. My dad really doesn't like the talking sea captain, and you've met my dad. He is not.
Yes.
He is not one to keep his opinions to himself.
Not a quiet man.
Not a quiet man.
And so I'm curious, over the years that you have been doing this now, your parents are people who have opinions, who are so entertaining. Have they given you sort of notes over the years about how you've been doing, encouragement as you've found your voice and curated your pieces?
Yeah. I mean, so when we first started doing a Closer Look, we didn't call them a Closer Look. We sort of just all of a sudden would do like a 10-minute longer piece.
Right.
And my dad was the guy who said you should call them all the same thing. So that was a really helpful piece of advice. And then his other piece of advice that my mom shares is that they think it's really good when they're on the show. They think people like it. They think that it should probably happen a little more often.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I loved
think
when
Baze
was like, nobody likes this, nobody cares. Stop having them on so much. Like, I still remember.
You're not the
that.
queen. I think he said you're not the queen to my mom.
One thing I did want to ask you about, though, since we were talking about writing and getting nominations for writing, is one thing that your show does that a lot of late night shows don't, is you have a lot of authors on. And I know that this is something that's important to you. And they're not always household names. Sometimes you are introducing us to people and their work for the first time. And I'm curious why that's so important to you.
Well, I've read a few articles over the years that sort of speak about, especially, when you go to an MFA program, how, a lot of the authors that you're expected to, be knowledgeable about, to read, like it's pretty dominated by, white men. And, I sort of realized, we have this cool opportunity to have a platform for, writers of different backgrounds. And I will say it's been, in the same way that having a diverse writing staff has been a boon for our show, having diverse writers on the show has been a boon for, my reading habits, because I'm reading a lot of things for guests that maybe I wouldn't have otherwise. And so that was really cool. And the other thing, and again, the reward for our show, we've just found that authors are just fantastic storytellers, and they do not go too long with an answer. Like, it's one of the most interesting things is actors, God love them, and I do love them, sometimes can't round off an answer, whereas the minute an author has made their point, they stop talking. They're very good at it.
To the detriment.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, wait, you're done? Okay.
Yeah, if you have 9 questions for an author and you realize after the first 3 that you've only gone 45 seconds, that's when you realize, oh boy.
But I like that basically you're saying you're doing this to like build up your own library, as if you would not read it all if these people were not on the show.
I think, and I want to give credit to Sarah Jane Staley's producer on our show, who, she's sort of been tasked with being our book finder, and she has wonderful taste, and she's really taken it seriously, this idea of let's try to find people that wouldn't otherwise be out here. And it's been a cool thing for her, and she probably is reading 5 times what I am to find the 1 times that I'm reading, and so we're lucky to have her.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And musically you guys do that too. That you have, sometimes you have people on who are, it's exciting when I get the press releases that are like in their first national television appearance on late night.
Yeah, and again, it just speaks to how important it is to have different members of your staff who take the job as seriously as you do. Jeremiah Silva is our music booker, and it's such a huge deal for him to recognize a band that he believes next year will be everywhere. Nothing makes him happier than if he gets an SNL musical guest a year before they're on SNL.
Absolutely.
And it's cool because, you know, I think that I don't want to sort of out my demographic age-wise, but once you hit 46, you're not like super plugged into what the new music is. And there's only so many times you can knock on his door and tell him there's a new Wilco album. So
not that there's anything wrong with that. And
no,
also a Jeff Tweedy
let me
solo
just make it
album.
clear.
And a Jeff Tweedy book.
We will bump any of those youngsters should Tweedy want to come back on.
Absolutely.
But so it's cool, you know, and I always, you know, again, these jobs aren't without their stresses, but the greatest part of it is, you know, someone you trust comes to your office and says, you know, here's an album I think you'd like, or here's a book I think you'd want to read. And it's a really, you know, to have people curating tastes for the show, you know, if you're the person who's hosting that show, you get it curated for you as well.
Right. And it makes you look so much cooler than you actually are.
I think there are some bands I introduced that people at home watching get the sense that I've maybe never heard before.
Exactly. There's just an inkling that they have. So
Yeah.
Part of what we're doing here is we're taking some questions from the audience as well. And so I want to go to a couple of those. One person watching wants to know, is it cathartic to find humor in the news of the day when lately the news has been worrisome and kind of depressing?
It is really cathartic to process the news through writing about it, especially writing about it comically. And, you know, being in a hiatus now and not doing shows again until after Labor Day, this is the hardest time because things that would make you angry now can just make you angry. There's not a chance to find a way to present it comically. So it is off weeks where I more often find myself muttering to myself, well aware that the muttering would be a sketch if given the opportunity.
So is there ever a chance in that scenario where like something is actually good enough that it can last a week and come back?
Nothing.
It's just too topical.
Nothing lasts anymore, right? Like, and I will say, it's bad for the world at large. It's not terrible for your personal life because even on a weekend, in these days, in this administration, if something happens on a Saturday morning, it's probably not worth talking about for a Monday night show.
Yeah.
So kind of on a Saturday, you can just say, all right, I'm going to turn off Twitter and, you know, turn off my CNN alerts, and I'm just going to spend time with my family. And I will not feel like it's the dereliction of my work duties because this is just not, it just doesn't count.
Yeah, it's maybe not as stressful in that regard. And it's interesting that you mentioned Twitter too, because your show has been on for the exact sort of number of years to see this real rise of people not watching the show in the time slot, but watching a closer look the next day, watching the best sort of guest segments the next day in video clips. And obviously from a ratings perspective, you want as many eyeballs as you can at the time that you're on. But then there's this stickiness to people passing stuff around. So what's your view on sort of how social media is sort of helpful and maybe harmful in terms of the show?
I mean, we don't ever think about the harm element of it. I just don't know. And we haven't really ever seen or had data presented to us that it's stealing eyeballs away.
That's good.
And the thing I'll say is, that's been nice for us is we never had to adjust the show in a way of thinking, what will the digital audience want? You know, when we started our show in 2014, I think the conventional wisdom was the internet is for the shorter things, the popular things. There's less of an attention span on YouTube. And yet what we found is, you know, obviously the part that has the most eyeballs online the next day for us is a closer look. And that sometimes can be 15, 16 minutes long. And people are watching it all. So that has been the most refreshing, coolest part to us is, oh, hey, that long thing we did is the thing that most people are engaging with the next day.
But the thing I always wonder watching closer look is how you calibrate, because there have got to be times when you are talking about a thing that legitimately personally upsets you, and how you calibrate sort of letting some of that energy into it but keeping it funny because it needs to be funny, even when it is a legitimately upsetting topic. And also, like, you have 3 or 4 levels that you have to play in those. And how do you do that? I mean, it's probably just natural. I'm sure it's not like a formula, but I'm curious.
Yeah, I think it's once it gets the performance of it, it's natural. I mean, certainly you make those decisions in the writing where it's a little bit more considered. And, you know, our last Closer Look before a 2-week break, like, we did make a real effort because we were aware that we were going to be off for 2 weeks. And we certainly can't predict, or we would never try to predict what would happen. But we did want to remind everybody, and it's a real, you know, it's a drag to write it, it's a drag to say it, but we did want to remind everybody, like, hey, these things are happening, and it's not just because they've been happening, you know, for a very long period of time doesn't mean it's not serious, and we can't let ourselves be desensitized. So, you know, those are choices you make in the writing of, like, hey, you know, this won't be as fun as listening to a sea captain painting talking to a wooden duck, but you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and there are a lot of people who should be getting us out of it who aren't taking it seriously.
Right, absolutely. So we have another question from the audience, and this is a question I think that a lot of people would like to know the answer to. How sick did you get after day drinking with Rihanna?
It was, I wasn't on sick. I passed out the minute I got home. I should also
and how did
note,
you get home? There was a driver involved, right?
There was a driver. Driver got me home, and I did pass out, like, in the entranceway to our apartment. And I also think this is important to note because it really just speaks to the power of Rihanna. I got the sense that she was going out after.
So it was no problem for her.
Yeah. Like, we drank the exact same amount, and then I, like, literally stumbled to my car, and she very, like, with incredible decency and grace, said goodbye to everyone on our crew. Like,
So
as
you...
yeah.
That's just how queenly and regal she is. But when you watch those back, like, is there ever, the Kelly Clarkson one always comes to mind for me because you're singing.
Yeah.
Is there ever you're like, maybe we should run this one?
I always make my producer and best friend Mike Shoemaker. I make him watch it first, just to say, will there be something here that I will be? Will I just be so ashamed? And, like, I would just like to say, like, it's like anytime you say to anyone, like, oh my God, last night was so fun, we got so drunk, that was the best. If someone's like, I filmed the whole thing, you'd be like, whoa, no. So,
Exactly.
I mean, yeah. But the other thing I should note is, you know, and again, none of this is healthy or good for the human body, but I drink a lot really early on in them because, you know, we only have our participants for a couple hours, and you don't want to, like, slowly get drunk. And also, you know, I have to, like, kill with alcohol the writer brain that's trying to, like, think ahead of it, right? Like, everything fun we've done in those is, like, the things that just, like, happen in the moment, as opposed to, like, the bits that we've been structuring out for the month leading up to it. So it's really
out the window.
Yeah, it's like, all right, go to bed, you that guy who's always got notes.
It is super fun. So we need to wrap up. So the word on the street is that you are heading back to the studio soon. Is there anything you can tell us about when those shows might be coming on? Anything that we can sort of look forward to seeing?
I mean, obviously, like, everything's fluid, but as soon after Labor Day as possible would be the goal. You know, obviously with the caveat that things change really quickly these days. But we're certainly, you know, our show is in debt to the incredible work that New York City has done in taking this seriously. You know, we wouldn't even be talking about open up the studio, and we're also in debt to the Tonight Show and the fact that Jimmy and his people have been back there sort of showing us the safest path forward.
Right, they're blazing the trail for you. Well, we want to thank NBC and thank you, Seth, so much for being with us today, and for everybody on your couch, on your back deck, in your office, wherever you're tuning into this. Thank you so much for joining us, and please take good care. Bye, Seth.
Bye. Thanks, Sarah.